Good evening. This is just a snapshot of some of the success that the girls volleyball team has achieved in the last 2 seasons. And there's been a lot of winning, I'm proud to say. And tonight, I want to talk to you about some of those keys that have led to our success. I'm not arrogant or naive enough to think that it's all because of me, believe me. There's a lot of things that were in place before I even came on the scene as head coach 2 years ago. First of all, there's always been a really great culture for girls volleyball here at Baldwin High School. I think they won their first WPIAL championship in 1986. And between then and now, they've won 11 of those championships. 11 championships in 30 years. That's something I didn't have to do. I didn't have to fix that. Hard work. The girls that I coach, they work so hard and they play really hard. As a coach, I can do my job and put a good practice plan in place and put a good match strategy in place. I can give them workouts to do in the summer, but they have to make the decision to go and do the work, and they do. They take it very seriously. And lastly, I coach a lot of talent. On the varsity team, I get these girls when they're juniors and seniors. Some of them have been playing since they were in 5th grade. And so elementary and middle school and junior varsity and club coaches do a lot of developing these players. And when I get them, they're already pretty accomplished. I think there are some things, though, at least, that I have been able to add to this success, and I want to talk about those. There's 4 of them. First, this one's kind of personal. I graduated from St. Francis College. I went there to play volleyball, and they told me at one point that I had to declare a major, so I did. I picked biology. That was my favorite class in high school. So I graduated with a degree in biology, and I had no idea what I was going to do with that degree. I was fortunate enough to get a job at Children's Hospital in Pittsburgh, and I was working in the asthma and allergy department. I was doing research. I was a research assistant. And it was a pretty cool job because there were a lot of young people, recent college graduates that were working there doing the same thing. And so we had a lot of fun. But I quickly realized that they were there for a different reason than I was. They were using that job as a stepping stone to go on to bigger and better things. Medical school, the doctors would write really good letters of recommendation. I had no intention of going to medical school. So I realized that this was kind of a dead-end thing. I needed to do something else, and I got continually frustrated. So one day at my desk, I sat down at the computer, and I said this prayer, and I apologize because it's kind of irreverent. I said, God, this sucks. What am I going to do? And almost before the words finished coming out of my mouth, a voice in my head said, you need to teach. I didn't like that idea very much. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I never wanted to teach. But I decided I didn't have any other options. I had to do something different. And so I left that job and I went back to school to teach. And I have to tell you that it was very easy for me. Doors were just opened. I started to coach. Things went really smoothly. And I don't say that to brag. I say that because I think when we do what we're supposed to, when we're obedient, when we fulfill our purpose, success follows pretty quickly. One of my favorite authors, John Maxwell, he writes a lot about leadership. He says, there are 2 great days in a person's life, the day you were born and the day you find out why. And I think that's true. I think if we all sought our purpose, we would find success pretty quickly. We've all been given specific talents and gifts that only we can use, and we need to be obedient to God's will and do what He's telling us to do. If you're going to do this, if you're going to seek your purpose, I have to warn you, sometimes it might get a little bit uncomfortable, like it was for me. I didn't want to go back to school to become a teacher. But number 2, I think we need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, if that makes sense. I'll tell you a quick story. I remember a first date that I had back in college. We went miniature golfing. She was very terrible at miniature golf. The first 2 holes did not go well. I probably made some sort of sarcastic remark. Then she started to continually hit the ball. She would never let it stop moving. She'd hit it and run and hit it and run and hit it and run until she would get it into the cup. This was appalling to me, how she could do this. I couldn't believe that she didn't want to compete with me. I love competition. And I got to thinking, competition makes people uncomfortable. Change makes people uncomfortable. Trying new things makes people uncomfortable because there's always a fear there. There's always a fear of failure or a fear of losing. But unless we're willing to be uncomfortable and take some chances, we're never going to grow. We're never going to get any better. We're never going to improve as people. I can tell you, at practice with the girls' volleyball team, I try to make practice uncomfortable, so much that there's pressure on them all the time. There's situations where there's anxiety. They're stressed. I want them to perform under pressure, and I can tell you this, there's not one time during the last 2 seasons when I've looked at my team on the court and thought to myself, they can't handle this. They're overwhelmed. This is too big for them. This African proverb says, smooth seas do not make skillful sailors. If things are always easy, we're never going to grow. We're never going to get better. We need to stretch ourselves, and that's why the girls are so good. No matter what the situation, they're always comfortable. They're never overwhelmed. If you're going to take the chance and put yourself in a spot where you're uncomfortable, you're going to have to be good at number 3. We have to be positive. As a younger coach, I was not always very positive. As a matter of fact, I think by nature I'm kind of a negative person, so I really work hard at being positive, and I think I'm getting a little bit better at it. But I can tell you, I was the head coach at Peters Township, the varsity boys program there for 8 seasons. And that was a difficult place because there was no culture there. I had to start pretty much from scratch. Even though they had a team for 20 years, they never had a winning season. And so I needed to change that. And I was kind of angry all the time, and I thought I had to be this certain way to make us good. Well, about my 4th season there, we had a pretty good team. And I thought, wow, we might be on the verge of something good here. During one match, one of my mentor coaches came and watched us play. After the match, I was talking to her, and she said to me, why are you so unhappy? I said, what do you mean? She said, well, all you do is yell. You have a permanent scowl on your face. You look like you're in pain half the time. You think those players want to look over there and see you, their coach, look like that? That was kind of hard to hear, but she was right. And so from that point on, I decided that I was going to fake it till you make it. So I smiled all the time. And it was really hard. I had to force it. I had to force myself to smile. But the more I did that, the better I got at it. And soon, maybe after a year or 2, I wasn't forcing it anymore. It wasn't pretend. I was actually smiling. And I think that my players could tell you now that when they look over on the sideline, their coach usually is smiling at them. Even if I have to call a timeout because we're playing poorly, there's a smile on my face. And even if we're losing set 5 of the WPIAL championship game against North Allegheny, 11-8, and I call a timeout, there's a smile on my face. And I think it just puts everybody at ease. If I'm negative, if I look like I'm worried, how can I expect my players to act differently? Head coach of the Clemson football team, Dabo Sweeney, he says, if I don't, they won't. If I'm not positive, how can I expect my team to be positive? And so I try my very best to be positive. This is one of my favorite quotes of all time about having a positive attitude. Charles Swindoll is a pastor. I actually had this hanging on my dorm room at school. He says, I'm convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. And so it is with you. We're in charge of our attitudes. No matter what happens on the court, at my job, in my life, to my family, I choose how I'm going to respond to it. And I can be negative, I can be positive. Being positive is a far better way to go. I think if we can excel in this area, then we're going to be pretty good at this last one. And maybe this last one is most important. We need to build relationships with people. People are the most important thing. And so I try to do that as a coach and a teacher. I try to build relationships with my students and the kids that play for me. I'm very honest with them, even when that's uncomfortable. Sometimes I have to ask for their forgiveness because I'm not perfect. I've done that before. I've had to ask for their forgiveness. I tell them I'm proud of them. I tell them how much it means to me that they play so hard. A few years ago, a good friend of mine, he was going through a pretty rough time. His grandmother had passed away, and a good friend of his had passed away in pretty close proximity. And he called me on the phone, and he said, "Chris, I just want to tell you that I love you." And I was kind of shocked by that. First of all, men don't say that to each other. It's not very macho, right? But it really had an impact on me. I thought, yeah, that's right. We need to be more open and let people who are close to us know how we feel about them. And that's exactly what he said. He said, "I don't want anybody who I'm close to not to know how important they are to me." And so I can tell you that as I put gold medals around every one of my players' necks after this year's WPIAL title game, I gave each one of them a hug. I thanked them for working so hard, and I told them that I love them. And I think that not only do we need to be that way towards people who are close to us, we need to be that way towards everybody. We need to love and show love whenever we can. Fear doesn't motivate people. Love motivates people. Tom Flick is a former NFL quarterback. He said, "Feelings are much more influential than thoughts when driving people forward." As a coach or a leader or anybody, you can appeal to a person's intellect, and I think that only takes you so far. But when you appeal to their heart, when they know that you care about them, that can take you a whole lot farther. And so I've tried to build those kind of relationships with my players, and I hope that they feel the same way about me and that they trust me, and that's why they play so hard. So, just to wrap it up, there they are. Find and fulfill your purpose. Don't be afraid of being uncomfortable. Maintain a positive attitude. Work on building meaningful relationships. I wish you all success. Thanks.